Hi there, I'm nicodehaan, and welcome to Living a Primal Lifestyle, where we explore a return to a more balanced and natural wild world.
To recover our natural health, regain our rights and freedoms, I'm Ellen Daha.
It's a beautiful day in Durango, Colorado. Right now it's 74 degrees, going up to, what is it?
81.
81, yeah. Where the rest of the world seems to be
Sweltering.
smothering in heat. Yeah,
Sweltering.
sweltering, yeah, for sure. Yeah, we're doing really fine out here, that's for sure.
Mhm.
It's been really nice out here in the mountains. And let's see, where are we here? Let me get my script so I can see exactly what I'm doing. Please subscribe to our channels. Hit the follow button, hit the like button, help our channel grow. We post on Facebook and LinkedIn, and of course, we're on YouTube. If you hit the link below the show notes, you can maximize your nutrition from products from Mother Earth Labs. We have some other products on there from Amazon that we use, and we provide
Supplements.
Yeah, so yeah.
Mhm.
Basically, we look at mainstream news stories about anti-aging, natural health, and history, climate, as well as our freedoms, and we go do our own analysis. All the topics for today's show are in the show notes listed below in the description. If you have any comments or questions, you can always reach me at nicodehaan@me.com. And yeah, got about these other buttons here, but here they are. If you want them, we got them. So that's basically it. It's been a little while since we've been on here. We've been a little
3 weeks.
Yeah, we had a little vacation time going on,
Yeah. Family visiting.
and summertime, we're doing a lot more stuff outside.
Mhm.
And yeah, so we're really enjoying ourselves. Let me turn off this Mother Earth Labs sticker here. Yeah, there we go. So today we're going to talk about fermentation. And we're going to start with this first article that the origins of fermentation, food with a past and a purpose.
Yeah, it's interesting that fermented foods basically are slightly pre-digested. They're prebiotic, as we call them.
Mm-hmm.
And they give your digestive system a little help before you even eat them.
Yeah.
Because of the state that they're in when they come into your stomach.
Yeah, and every country seems to have, and we'll go into this as we go through a few of these articles. Every country seems to have their own little specialty that they used. Me being born in the Netherlands, we were very commonly, at least once or twice a week, would have sauerkraut.
Mhm.
And
And you think of that sauerkraut with Germany as well, and
yeah,
some of the other European countries, but it's been around and it's kind of ubiquitous around the world. So let's start with this article.
yeah, let's take it back, way back to time before refrigerators, supermarkets, and vitamin pills. Across continents and cultures, humans turned to fermentation to preserve the harvest, nourish their bodies, feed families, and build communities.
Those early days showed hunter-gatherers using stone mortars for fermentation, dating back at least 13,000 years, which would be back to the Younger Dryas end of the Ice Age.
Yeah, fermented foods have continued to grow in popularity, offering nutrients, probiotics, enzymes, and a tasty, crunchy approach to eating your way to a thriving, diverse gut microbiome.
But where do fermented foods come from? So the article dives into the history of fermentation, including the tasty fermented dishes from around the globe.
Yeah, we're skipping a lot in these things, but you can read a lot of this stuff yourself. And we're kind of just highlighting a lot of things because we have a lot to cover. Before, our ancestors were hauling ice blocks into their homes, and I still remember that.
Mm-hmm. It was a box that opened from the outside.
Yeah.
And the iceman would come and deliver the block of ice into the box.
Yeah, it was kind of like the early mailboxes had that same kind of thing, where they would place it into a box and you could reach it from the inside.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't even have to go outside.
Mm-hmm.
But fermentation allows seasonally harvested favorites to stay fresh for longer while keeping the food safe for consumption.
A bountiful meal could show up on the table, even through seasons of scarcity and famine, whether it was cabbage and crocks, milk and clay pots, or olives in brine, fermentation was a natural form of conserving goods, retaining fresh, flavorful food with the added benefit of gut healthy probiotics.
So around the world and along the way, every culture began to develop its own signature take on fermentation. Food from a form of went from a form of survival to representing a diverse range of flavors and traditions with the added benefit of live cultures.
And that's what the probiotics
So here we have a list.
So Korea had kimchi, a cornerstone of Korean cuisine, and it supports gut health.
Yeah, Germany, Eastern Europe, of course, the Netherlands had sauerkraut. Fermented cabbage is packed to last through the long, cold winters, keeping families nourished.
Greece, Italy, and Israel, olives from the Mediterranean often contain live cultures fermented in brine with herbs and spices and eaten as a tasty everyday probiotic.
Yeah, in India, pickled mango and vegetables are fermented with spices and oil to preserve nutrients, offering a dose of antioxidants and flavor.
In Japan, probiotic-rich staples like miso and natto are packed with enzymes, often aiding indigestion and longevity.
Ethiopia and Nigeria fermented grains, and they help support the gut and metabolic health.
Russia and the Middle East, kefir?
Yep.
Kefir and yogurt are milk-based ferments, rich in probiotics, enzymes, and B vitamins. And we watch a number of different YouTube videos, and we've seen people traveling through the Middle East.
Yeah, like Itchy Boots from Holland.
Yep. Yeah, and she's offered food by the local people, include yak milk that's been fermented.
Yeah, right now she's in Mongolia, the latest Mongolia, and she has all kinds of different foods that may not be appealing right away to us,
to our Western palates.
Especially if you're just eating fast food or something like that. But as you go into these cultures, I think your palate adapts to these things, and of course, if you're feeling good because of what you're eating, that naturally has its own.
That's a positive reinforcement,
right?
Yeah,
it's no coincidence.
And they've served her a lot of yogurt.
Yeah,
and a lot of
fermented milk
and creams
and things like that. It's no coincidence that every culture has a ferment. Fermented foods were passed on from generation to generation as a form of survival. It's ancient wisdom, all bottled up in a shelf-stable jar.
The art of fermentation is as old as civilization itself. In ancient Egypt, communities ate dairy products, fermented bread, and drank beer. In China, an analysis of ancient pottery jars showed fermented products of rice, honey, and fruits dating all the way back to the 7th millennium BC.
Foods can be medicine, culture, and memories all in one. That's the magic of fermentations. Our ancestors figured out that fermented food lasted longer on the shelf than pickled foods, but they didn't know exactly what happened to their food during this process.
After packing jars and pots with vegetables, covering them with the saltwater brine mixture, bacteria, which is in the form of lactobacillus, began to convert sugars into lactic acid, breaking down carbohydrates, fats, and proteins in the process.
Yeah, the result was food with a new flavor and texture that could be kept on the shelf through long periods of food scarcity.
What the generations before us did not know, science can now confirm. A diet rich with fermented foods supports immunity while creating a healthy gut with a thriving, diverse microbiome.
Yeah, this study shows that eating fermented food strengthened immunity, improved the gut function, all while minimizing gut-induced inflammation, managing stress, and reducing the risk of chronic disease.
Imagine eating sauerkraut to manage your stress. For me, eating sauerkraut is very stressful. It's so sour.
Yeah, well, everybody's palate is different, but I know that your ancestors do come from the Ukraine area, Eastern Europe, mine is Western Europe, and all of those cultures had that in it. And of course, I grew up with it in my family all the time. I think you did too, because your family had a lot of Jewish dishes.
Well, we
that
had
were-
we had the dishes from Eastern Europe. We had the dishes from Austria.
and also
we
ones
had-
from Israel and things like
No,
that too.
there was nobody from Israel.
No, but I'm talking about the foods.
Yeah, well, we had
Those
we ate-
traditional Jewish foods when we go to
Well, for
weddings
example-
and things like that.
Well,
we see
for
those.
example, we had borscht,
Yes.
which is beef soup, but that's also very common in Russia and,
Yeah.
and the former USSR nations and
Right.
so on. And we had something called gefilte fish, which was a chopped up fish that had been cooked,
Mhm.
and then it was
Stored.
molded into kind of individual portions, and it was kept in a jellied kind of
Yeah, so
bath.
the oxygen wouldn't get to it,
Mhm,
right? And that's really what fermentation does.
Yeah.
It starves
It eliminates the oxygen.
yeah, that's what I was trying to say.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Fermented foods naturally provide probiotics and enzymes, electrolyte minerals, B vitamins, including B12, and also vitamin C and K2.
Yeah,
So you can
K2
now
is not that
understand.
easy to get.
Yeah, unless you're eating animal foods, right?
Right. Okay, well, let's go on to the next.
Yeah. Okay. So,
And it says Beyond Sauerkraut, a brief history of fermented foods. And the thing is, when you think of fermented foods, you tend to think of sauerkraut.
well, it's one
and
of the
pickles,
first things. Yeah.
Kind of for Western culture.
Yes.
So, and people eat yogurt all the time without thinking at all about the fact that it's a fermented food.
Yeah, and of course we have these fancy new yogurts that maybe not
Greek
as, yeah,
yogurts. And,
not quite as good as
well, I
the
don't
traditional.
know. I don't have to look
Well,
at
at least
these.
it's better than nothing, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I have to also look at the ingredients of a Greek yogurt and compare it to just a regular yogurt and see.
Well, I
Different.
prefer the more ancient style of Greek yogurt.
It's a little milder.
Yeah, and I
Mhm.
prefer the homegrown ones too. The people that make it and give it to us, those are usually some
Yeah,
of the best
they're
ones.
actually a little bit, even almost sweet, because they use a little, maybe a little sugar
Well,
to
usually
grow
honey.
the honey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here it says that humans have been controlling the fermentation process for thousands of years, primarily in the form of fermented beverages in the early days.
Thank goodness. First you got to have your beer and
That's
wine.
right. Evidence of a fermented alcohol beverage made from fruit, honey, and rice was found in Neolithic China, dating back to 7,000 BCE. Winemaking dates to around 6,000 BCE in Georgia and the Caucasus region of Eurasia. There is also strong evidence that people were fermenting beverages in Babylon around 3000 BCE.
I expect that fermented beverages were discovered by accident.
I think all of this probably was.
Yeah, well, I mean, certainly the first, if you had grains soaking in water or whatever, and then it fermented, and you had an alcoholic result, that would be quick to catch on.
Well, there's an old story of a samurai that was in a fight, and he had his rice in this clay pot, and the battle was lasting way, way longer, a couple of days. So by the time he got back to his rice, it was all fermented. And that's where they got some of that fermented food. And all of a sudden he goes, wow. And he felt great afterwards, and even though it was spoiled in the sense of this was something that benefited him. And whether that's a true story but it makes sense that something like that happened, whether it was with the rice.
Yeah, that people discovered it kind of accidentally, unintentionally.
Right.
They weren't running laboratories with.
No, but people were preserving,
Yeah.
especially in the old days. I'm thinking, and we've got an article at the end here that talks about the Inuit people. And I'm just thinking that back before the Younger Dryas, we know that most of the large animals that were extinct during these modern times were alive before the Younger Dryas. And that means that if you use common sense and you have this large animal that you're slaying for the village, now nobody's going to be eating the whole thing. So now you've got to
Or
preserve.
there's too much food.
There's too much food. So
Mhm.
whether you accidentally, you say, well, it's too much, we'll just leave it out there.
Yeah.
And then
Well,
you
the good
kind of,
thing about the Inuit peoples was that they lived in areas where there was winter,
well,
and
that too.
snowpack,
Sure.
and so on. So they were able to preserve some of their food that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
All right. Well, let's see what it says.
Okay.
Even before fermented alcoholic beverages were developed, humans were fermenting a type of food with notoriously poor holding qualities. In other words, they didn't stay fresh. They didn't have a good shelf life, as it were,
Right.
which was dairy. Particularly the milk of camels, goats, sheep, and cattle was naturally fermented as far back as 10,000 BCE. It's likely fermentation occurred spontaneously rather than intentionally due to naturally existing microflora present in the milk.
Yeah, the subtropical climate where this dairy fermentation took place likely played a large role in its occurrence, as thermophilic lactic acid fermentation favors the heat of this climate. It has been suggested that the first yogurts were produced in goat bags draped over the backs of camels in the heat of North Africa, where the temperature around 110 during the day made the ideal conditions of fermentation to occur. We can do that now in the Midwest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In the central of the country. Yeah, it's hot everywhere right now, except here.
Yeah. It wasn't until the mid 1800s, though, that people understood what was happening to make their food ferment. Louis Pasteur, you've heard of him before.
I think so.
He he first connected yeast to the process of fermentation, making him the first zymologist, or someone who studies the applied science of fermentation. Pasteur originally defined fermentation as respiration without air
or oxygen.
And he understood by his observations that fermentation never occurred in the absence of simultaneous cellular propagation and organization. At this time, fermentation was still being used solely to increase the holding and storing properties of food.
Yeah. In the last 40 years or so, extensive research has been conducted examining the health benefits of consuming friendly bacteria. There appears to be linkages between consuming these friendly bacteria and improving digestion and detoxification, among other areas. Our modern food cultures represent these findings in the popularization of probiotic products. A probiotic is simply a food that contains those friendly bacteria.
And it's friendly bacteria that basically help you digest your food and promote gut health.
But it also detoxifies. That's
Right.
the thing that
Right.
a lot of times isn't mentioned, and I'm glad they mentioned it here, because detoxification is a way of staying healthy. Also, we have to get rid of things that are not good for us. Right?
In 1900, fermentation was a method of food preservation. Fermenting foods provided a way to store them without the need for refrigeration. While farm wives in 1900 may not have been making kimchi or kombucha, they were certainly feeding their families fermented foods such as cheese, which is something you don't think about as being fermented.
Right.
Bread, which would probably be sourdough, which is fermented.
Definitely.
Beer and vinegar.
Yep.
So fermentation is an anaerobic process, which means it occurs in an airless environment.
Yeah, that's a pretty interesting part of the whole thing. It has to be sealed up. The desirable bacteria thrive in an oxygen-free environment, digesting the sugar, starches, and carbohydrates, releasing alcohols, carbon dioxide, and organic acids, which are what preserves the food. The undesirable bacteria that causes spoilage, rotting, and the decay of food can't survive in this anaerobic environment. And that's really the benefit of what we're talking about with these foods. And as many people know who are watching this, that we started the carnivore style diet first about 20 some years ago. We started on the paleo style diet. And as we
started, I think, with what was it called? The 30-30-40?
That was first when we first got married. We were starting on
Yeah.
the 30-40, trying to just stop the ingestion of so many carbohydrates.
Mhm.
So we started
It was
eliminating
like 30% carbs
carbohydrates.
and 30% fat and 30%
No,
protein.
40%. Yeah,
Something like that.
something like that. I think the
Mhm.
protein was the
The
30%, and
Okay.
the
The
fat
fat
was
was
the
the
40%.
40%.
Highlighting to us for the first time that fat was probably way more important than anything else in
Mhm.
our diet. Certainly, we needed the protein to build our body, and but the fat was what we ran on.
Mm.
And the more we eliminated the carbohydrates, the higher the fat increased. We really didn't do much with the proteins at all. Proteins kind of stayed the same. Now I think we're at about a 25% protein, and the rest mostly is fat with a little bit of sugar. But most of when we're eating any kind of vegetable or fruit or drinking a beverage, it's usually fermented.
Mm.
It's usually going through this process for
Mhm.
us, and that really
Well,
helped
for
me.
example, last night we had ribeye.
Yep.
Okay, so ribeye, we have we've been finding you've been finding these lovely kind of large, fat, thick ribeyes,
With the bone in.
which with bone in. So we are able to share that and be completely satisfied with dinner. And then we take a piece of sourdough bread, which is fermented,
Yep.
and we maybe put some butter on it and do some
Olive
dipping
oil.
oil
Yep.
with a little Italian seasoning and some salt,
Yep.
and that
That's pretty much
gives
the
us
meal.
our fermented
Yep.
side dish.
Yep.
Sourdough bread seems to be the only. It's really not doesn't have the same kind of gluten in it, and it seems to
Well, it's been
the gluten
fermented, so it's easier to digest.
is much easier to digest, and it doesn't seem to have negative effects on either one of us.
No.
Whereas regular bread,
Yeah,
kind
and
of,
I've stated this before, but mostly through my life, when we moved to North America, I started having all kinds of different stomach ailments,
Mhm.
mostly just upset stomach and reflux acid, things like that. And most of the time, the doctor said, "Well, he's a nervous kid.
Yeah,
I
right.
got a nervous
Which you
stomach."
were,
Well,
just
maybe
a
so.
little bit,
Well, I was learning a different language, a different
yeah, getting
culture,
bullied by the
getting
local
bullied,
population.
which helped me become more of the person that I am.
Well, sure, of
Because I
course.
stood up for myself.
Mhm.
But the thing is that there was the change in food, because we were trying to not only Americanize or Canadianize ourselves, because we wanted to speak the language, we wanted to dress like the people here,
Fit in.
we wanted to fit in, so we were also eating their food. Although my mother did keep a lot of the traditional
Mm.
dishes. Let's go on to the next article, which is a study that links fermented foods with brain growth.
Yeah, I thought this was a very interesting little article here.
Yeah, the large, capable human brain is a marvel of evolution, but how did it evolve from a smaller primate brain into a creative, complex organ of today is still a mystery. Scientists can pinpoint when our evolutionary ancestors evolved larger brains, which roughly tripled the size of as humans evolved from bipedal primates known as
Australopithecines.
and that's still not really a proven thing that we
No.
were actually made from that tree, but it does seem likely because of the way we look and the way we acted.
Well,
But we still have a big mystery. We don't know a lot about human beings going back, I'd say, past 12, 15,000 years ago.
past year, there's been a lot of information gathered, a lot of research done, and a lot of archaeological examples
Mhm.
and evidence of a number of different branches
Yeah.
that led to ultimately uh, Homo erectus or whatever they call it.
Yeah, Homo sapiens sapiens, which we
Yeah.
are now.
Right.
But of course, there's rumors of us breeding with aliens. There's all kinds of things.
Neanderthals, we know for sure.
Yeah.
We didn't know about the aliens.
No, we don't. Those are still things that are out there. And as we know, that history is constantly changing. Now we think that the Egyptian pyramids were probably much, much older than they are now. So
Yeah,
there's more
yeah.
and
Now
more
they're
stuff
saying
to come out.
they're saying that human-like beings existed 450,000 years ago,
Maybe back as far as 1 million years.
and maybe
And that's a long time. If you think of, even if it's like a 500,000 years,
Yeah.
which we've pretty much proven that there have been Homo sapiens around that
or at
long.
least something, proto-humans.
And with brains the same size.
Mhm.
So just think what we've done in the last 250 years. Now, before the Younger Dryas, and we've talked about this before the big cataclysm, which eliminated maybe 90% of the species here, not only us, but other animals. What were we doing the other 400 and so many thousands or millions of years or thousands of years? I mean, our brain capacity really hasn't changed that much, and we're still as smart back then as we are now.
Well, in this article, scroll down a little bit.
Mhm.
It says earliest evidence places the use of fire at approximately 1.5 million years ago.
Yeah.
That's significantly later than the development
Yeah, because
of
we
the
first
actual.
thought it was like 50,000 years ago when we
Yeah,
invented
yeah.
fire. Well, that's
Yeah,
obviously
that's
not true.
right. And it was like,
And of course, the use of fire is what we started cooking the food, which makes it easier to digest, which allows our brain to grow. Because if our body,
let's see what it
Okay.
says. Our ancestors' cranial capacity began increasing 2.5 million years ago, which conservatively gives us about a 1 million year gap in the timeline between brain size increasing
Okay.
and possible emergence of cooking technology. Whatever changed in their diets had to have happened before brains started getting bigger. So it's so the hypothesis is that the change in diet and the change in cooking and so on led to the development of the bigger brain in the humans.
That makes sense. So the hypothesis is supported by the fact that human large intestines is proportionally smaller than those of other primates, suggesting that we adapted to food that was already broken down by the chemical process of fermentation. In addition, fermented foods are found in all cultures across all food groups, from Europe's wine and cheese to Asian soy sauce and natto, a Japanese soybean dish. Natto. Yeah.
Okay, so
it's disputed whether fermented foods actually help grow the brain, but we know that fire did because of the process of cooking food.
Right. Well, fire did, but then we were eating better food that fed our brains.
And once you cook the food, it lasts longer, and then the fermentation process makes that even longer.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, so the next article it's quite long and it has quite a bit of information in it, but we'll just kind of give you some highlights.
Yeah, I wanted this article in here because this is basically, it's called From Ancient Fermentation Methods to Modern Biotechnology, Historical Evolution.
So go down to number 2. There you go.
Right there. Go ahead.
The history of natural starters can be traced back to the dawn of human civilization, when the discovery and utilization of fermentation as a method of food preservation became an essential aspect of early practices of food processing.
Now, they call this the dawn of civilization, and they're talking about approximately 10, maybe 12,000 years ago. So, and if we've been around 450,000 years, or maybe longer,
we had fermentation before 10,000.
Maybe so. Maybe so.
All right. So
fermentation techniques and their resulting products were likely developed approximately 10,000 years ago, with the goal to preserve food during scarcity while enhancing its taste.
During ancient times, fermentation was initiated by the action of microorganisms naturally present in the environment. These complex microbial communities, consisting of bacteria, yeast, and fungi, conducted the fermentation, ultimately contributing to the unique flavors, aromas, and textures of the final products.
Yeah, early civilization unknowingly noticed the power of microorganisms, allowing for the spontaneous fermentation of foods and beverages. As human knowledge advanced, the intentional selection and cultivation of specific starter cultures emerged, leading to the deliberate use of well-adapted microorganisms in fermentation. This deliberate selection and use of natural starters, influenced by indigenous knowledge and cultural practices, has shaped the development and refinement of fermented foods and beverages throughout history. And they go through a lot of different things here, like the cereals and legumes.
Yeah, now
But
fermentation of cereals would be like sourdough bread.
Yeah, and
Right.
also rice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and wheat
Mhm.
sprouted, you know, and
Yeah,
the sprouting of things too.
Mhm.
And most of the time when we're talking about this, and most of the articles give us kind of dates of 10,000, 12,000 years, sometimes maybe 15,000 years ago. And that brings to mind the Younger Dryas hypothesis.
Right.
And this was the age when
This was the
well, we were in ice age for thousands of years,
Yeah.
and it was getting warmer slowly,
about
warmer.
12,000 years ago was the
12,800, to be
Yeah.
exact. There was
Mhm.
a big shift where it
Mhm.
started getting cold again. And this is the same time that the large animals in North America and probably Asia and China, most of them disappeared. And the only continent that was kind of spared was Africa that we know of.
Mhm.
We know a lot of different things happened. We know that we found elephants and mastodons and things like that in North America, in Alaska, with food still in their mouth. So whatever happened, happened fast. There was still grass in their stomachs,
Mhm.
which brings two things to mind. First of all, it happened very quickly.
Very
And,
quickly.
and
The
if they were in
last-
Alaska, which was already completely frozen, where did they
Where
get
did they get the grass and the
Yeah, so
flowers?
there was a lot of shifts that was happening, and maybe, and we've
Mhm.
talked about the crustal shift before. But regardless, this is when all those animals were vanishing all over the world except for Africa. And it brings me to mind, and I have no evidence of this, but we probably were a little short on meat at that time as we were re-emerging out of this disaster.
Right.
And it probably took thousands of years because most of the claims of civilization was 5,000 BC, maybe 3,500 BC. Then all of a sudden we see some of these cultures coming back.
Well, it seems, according to the geological and scientific evidence, there was a pole shift,
Well,
magnetic
yeah.
pole shift.
But regardless,
Well, wait a minute. And I mean, so people were suddenly thrown into totally foreign environments and had to adapt.
yeah, and there was less animals around.
And there
So-
weren't, that's exactly my
And
point.
if it was really cold,
Mhm.
when you're emerging out of these caves and things like that. Now, the animals, yeah, you can find them, but they're probably more scarce. So now you adapt yourself to maybe eating some of the contents of their stomachs, which is vegetables, and you realize that
Well,
you
then-
can start eating this stuff where before you were probably just using it as seasoning, kind of like what we're doing in the carnivore diet. We're using maybe 5 to 10% of these things, mostly as flavoring for the meats and the fish or whatever we're doing. And we're using the fermented because it's a lot easier on our body.
Mhm.
So even those, when you start eating plants and you haven't eaten them, they're hard to digest. It's hard to get the nutrients out of them.
Right.
So
we were not evolved to eat plants.
Well, at least that's what we think. Yeah.
Well,
So my thinking is that a lot of these types of things happened a lot by accident, but because we were forced into eating more and more plants, and our culture today is now we have a lot of people saying, we should only be eating plants,
right.
and so there we are. So this article goes through a lot of the
So it
things.
talks about sourdough, it talks about miso, it talks about tofu. These are foods that you should be familiar with. And
It's a long
let's see what else we got. Fermented dairy products, which should be yogurt and things. Cheeses. Cheese making is believed to have originated around 7,000 years ago, likely as a way to store surplus milk and make it more palatable.
Yeah. And you have tempeh, which is basically fermented soybeans, and so is the tofu that is made from. So these, most of the time when you're eating tofu, you're eating soybeans, but you're not eating soybeans in their present form that is from the plant. You're fermenting them. In fact, when you look at some of these processes that the Japanese use, they ferment them for years, 6 or 7 years under salt water, and they make a brine. And there's all kinds of things in here in this article. Fermented dairy products.
It says tofu's production involves soaking, grinding, and boiling soybeans to produce soy milk, which is then coagulated using either magnesium chloride or calcium sulfate to form curds, which are then pressed into solid blocks of tofu.
Yeah. And then we get to things like fermented dairy products, and maybe in our culture we're not too familiar with, but
well, yogurt is pretty much.
That's right. Yeah, you're right. So you talk about that. Of course, cheeses are, and the cheeses originate back about 7,000 years ago, they say. And there's all
But
kinds
I have
of
a suspicion that cheeses are old.
Yeah, probably. And fermented daily beverages, dairy beverages, and we also have fermented fruits and things that we use today. Fermented
Kimchi, which is a type of similar to.
And vegetable fermentation described early as the Song Dynasty in the 10th and 13th century AD in China. So that's not that long ago. We have kimchi here, beverages of fruits and vegetables.
And now, does that include
kombucha?
Kombucha. We use it.
Yeah.
It really helps if you have any kind of digestive issues. It helps your stomach to settle down and digest the food.
Yeah.
It's a carbonated, naturally carbonated.
It's kind of like beer without the alcohol.
Except it tastes better.
Well, for me, I like the beer. Of course, we have vinegar, which is
you don't really think of vinegar as a fermented food, but I read this and I said, oh, okay.
And it refers to an old French term called sour wine. So we have that, and of course, fermented seafood.
Like in ceviche, for example, is raw fish. It's prepared.
Non-plan is a pungent fish sauce.
Pungent.
So there's a lot of things in here. And then the last thing here is very interesting to me because we don't think of it that often, which is fermented meat.
Meat fermentation was used by the ancient civilizations of Northern Europe and Asia in order to use meat as a source of nutrients in times of scarcity with regard to fresh meat. Evidence from ancient Egypt suggests that the fermentation of meat was likely used early on.
Yeah, the earliest records of sausage production trace back to the Sumerians, while written references to these techniques date back to 600 BC in ancient Greece. So, things like the term salami likely originates from the medieval Latin term salamen, or possibly the
Cypriot city of Salamis.
Fermented sausages were known as the brig in the Roman Empire, a Celtic word meaning hill, possibly the origin of Brianza. Salami Brianza.
Salami Brianza.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is.
So.
Okay.
This article is here for you to read. There's a lot to it, and you're welcome to just explore with that. I wanted to go over this last one because it's one we don't really think of too much, but probably the whole ancient world was doing what the Inuit people were doing back just maybe 100 years ago. As part of the art, and this is called Inuit fermentation, animal-based.
And archaic.
As part of the Arctic indigenous diet, Inuit fermented foods are all animal sourced, and even the ones made from plants. From the stomach contents of caribou to the seabirds and seal skins, this short seminar introduces Inuit fermented foods, illustrating how these rare foods present us with an opportunity to appreciate the diversity of dishes and flavors that might come from entirely animal source bases. And there's a talk here.
Yeah, you can listen to.
You can watch on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was very interesting because the Inuit diet, the most basic thing one needs to know about the Inuit diet is not just the fermenting foods, but the diet in general, is that it's animal sourced.
Yeah, so it says
So
one of
it's
the things.
basically a primal type of diet that we're on.
It's a carnivore diet.
Carnivore diet, exactly.
And you know, when you think of carnivore diet, you think we only eat meat, but in this case, it points out that there are a lot of all the different parts of the animal can contribute to your nutrition and so on.
Yeah, there's some really good pictures in here too of that. So
yeah, well, so one of the things that's conventionally believed about an animal source diet is that it's not very varied. That's this notion that you can eat a rainbow in colors and plants and be healthy. And the author says, I believe it's because if we go into our supermarkets, look at the vegetable aisle, we see a lot of different colors. This gives us the impression of diversity. We also know that different fruits and vegetables can have sweet taste, sour taste, or bitter taste, and they all have different shapes and textures. Yeah. But we know that, for example, the mustard seed plant is the source of
most of the vegetables that we eat today, right?
It's the source of cauliflower, kale, and all and asparagus. Yeah. It's the same plant.
Yeah. We instinctively know that plants can be diverse, but we don't think about the animal source foods in the same way. An animal source food is a very diverse diet. If you look at the fermented foods from an animal source diet, you can be very convinced that it's a very diverse diet.
Sea mammals, in particular the seal, is sort of a cornerstone of the Inuit diet. Within the seal, there's a diversity of fermented foods. You can ferment entire carcasses with the bowels left in them. You can ferment the flesh or the entrails, the blood, the flippers, and the blubber filled into bags made of seal stomachs. Yeah. So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I go through a lot here.
And then it says Eric Holtmed in 1962 described the use of seal in Greenland as, to the Greenlanders, sealed meat is a nourishing food. And he describes the fermented versions, quote, fermented is what I call the meat which the Greenlanders store away until it is half putrefied. Indeed, sometimes it is almost rotten and stinking, for it is rarely so bad that they have to throw it away completely. In order to bring it into this condition, they put the meat into blubber pits in summer, cover it with a little blubber, where they leave the blubber on the meat, whereby it quickly becomes tender.
In winter, however, the process is not quite so simple, for then the meat will usually freeze and then be prevented from putrefying. So they have deep storage pits in the ground, to the deep parts of which the frost cannot get there so readily. Mm-hmm. A whole seal prepared in this fashion is to them the finest dish they can serve to an outside visitor, which the outside visitor may not like so well.
Well, it's going to be foreign to their palate. Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Land animals.
Land mammals. Land
Mm-hmm.
mammals are also part of the fermentation practice. Not so much the animals themselves, but their intestinal content. An example of a fish that is still made today is the snow fermented cod.
Around in January in the capital area of Nuuk, you can put layers of cod and then layers of snow, layers of cod, layers of snow, and then you make your snow fermented cod. And you can do this for about 3 or 4 months until it gets too hot. There are also a variety of birds that are part of this practice. In some cases, it's the intestinal content that's eaten in a fermented state, or in some version, it's the whole bird. But like
the little auk,
which is made into what is called the
kiviak.
And I will be showing this in talk. And here's a nice picture of intestines
hanging on the fence.
Hanging on the fence.
Yeah, there's quite a number of photos.
Yeah, these are good pictures. This is a dried narwhal intestine. Here's some more pictures. Narwhal, yeah. And here's the stomach, and you can see the fermented food inside.
And that was the way that they actually got some of the minerals and vitamins from the plants.
Exactly, from the animal.
Yeah, through the animal.
Through the animal.
Okay, next says when Inuit were eating plants, it would make a lot of sense to eat those high fiber plants in connection to microbes or together with microbes that can degrade these plants. And a fantastic way of doing that is to eat the stomach content of herbivores. And even coprophagia, eating the fecal matter of plant-eating animals, which also has been part of the diet.
So this is a nice way to prepare for a summer where there might have been a little bit more plant material in your diet. Otherwise, you wouldn't have gotten a lot of energy from that plant material. And we can show a little diversity of the different types of birds and
eggs and so on.
And here you have a guy sewing clothes. The contents of a bird, it looks like.
Yeah. So anyway,
there's a lot to this article, and I didn't want to read the whole thing, but I wanted to kind of give you. This is probably where it started in my way of thinking for most of at least the northern hemisphere. Maybe in Africa, things,
Well, they were in Africa. Different. There would be much more plants
and much more larger animals.
Yeah,
and the big diversity of a lot of things. So who knows what they did there? But it's an interesting thing to see now when we're looking at people, and we do a lot of watching of YouTube. People are traveling through these countries, and now we see in Africa a lot of Western culture going into those things. These are people that have a very short lifespan of eating modern food.
But they also, you got to remember that Africa was made up of a bunch of states and countries that were British colonies, French colonies, Dutch colonies.
Yeah, but not very. I mean, that was only 250 years ago.
Right.
Before that.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Good point.
Whereas Europe was thousands of years. So, and our culture here in the United States were small too, but we didn't have those large animals, so we couldn't continue with what our ancestors were doing maybe 20,000 years ago here. And we eliminated most of the indigenous people here.
And any large animals that there were, like the buffalo, the bison.
We got rid of those right away, right? Yeah, so anyway, this is kind of like what we're doing is supplementing our diet with some of these fermented foods, and it's really working for us. So we don't do it a lot, but any vegetables and breads and things that we do eat are mostly fermented, whether it's just kombucha as a liquid or
dill pickles,
sauerkraut, things like that. We're using these fermented to supplement our diets on a small basis, and mostly we're still eating a lot of animal products. This is probably 9% of our diet. It seems to be working for us, and I think my philosophy is mainly because the vegetable and everything that is pretty new to us, and it's also
new to humanity.
Well, it's also attacked by a lot of chemicals.
Oh yeah, now today's vegetables.
Yeah, at least we have a buffer there when we're eating the food, because the
animal has
digested it for us, so that makes a big difference to us. Do your own research and figure out how to live the best way you can. I think that's what we're trying to do. So thanks for sticking around. We appreciate it.
Be well, be safe.
Bye-bye.